Hey everyone, this is Josh All from the Get Level Podcast Network, and I just want to introduce this week's episode of the Anti-Drug Coalition, which is a special episode. It's a little different than what we've been doing. This is actually the after conversation, if you will, from the previous episode, which featured the mental health specialist from Tuscarawas County. We had the executive director from the Adams Board, Natalie Bolin. We had supervising counselor Tim Wicks from Personal Family Counseling Services, and we had the director of marketing and fundraising from Community Healthcare, Miles Riley. And the three of them came in and had a great discussion with Jody Salvo about mental health and, just the effects of mental health during this COVID-19 situation and the different resources that are available in our community for mental health. And while the people within the network of mental health resources understand the resources, obviously, and how they work and what people need to do to get those resources, the community at large does not necessarily know those things. It's not common knowledge. So what was very unique about last week, we had a guest who wanted to come in and observe a recording session just to see how we record and how we produce a show here at the studio. So we had our guest come into the studio. He sat through the entire conversation, the recording of last week's episode. And then after the episode was finished, the conversation that was being had, and then between the speakers, and then our guest who came in started asking some very good questions to our speakers, and the answers that were being given were just so informative and so important that we thought, we need to get this recorded and produced for the community. So our guest who came in is Dover native and former Cleveland Indians pitcher, Perci Garner. And Percy started asking some excellent questions, like I said, and the answers were flowing. And we said, Percy, would you be willing to jump on the microphone and have a conversation that we can record? And, depending on how everything in the conversation goes, we can release this to the public. And Percy said, absolutely, I'd be happy to do that. So we're just very grateful that Percy was so willing to just swing over in the chair, jump on the mic, and really share his experiences with mental health in regards to life and the pressures of performing at the highest level of athletics. So I'm fortunate. I grew up with Percy. I've known Percy since we were, back in elementary school. Got hit with a couple of his fastballs growing up. Those are not fun. Let me tell you that. But Percy's a great guy. I think anyone who knows him obviously knows that. But for those of you who don't, hopefully this episode will give you a little bit more of an insight as to who Perci Garner is, not just as the professional athlete, but as the human being, and give you the appreciation for the type of person that he is and his willingness and eagerness to help the community and to be an inspiration to all of those around him. So without further ado, here is the conversation between Natalie Bolin, Tim Wicks, Miles Riley, and our special guest, Perci Garner.
Sounds like you guys had fun.
Okay, so I'll just start with, being a person who I guess in the community seemed as a professional baseball player and all that stuff, and I looked at myself as that and immune to these certain things, but I definitely wasn't, and it kind of hindered my career because of, I guess, the mental aspect. Everyone thinks, oh, you were, you hurt your arm or something like that. I'm like, no, I was healthy, just wasn't, and I always like to think of myself, hey, mentally tough, I went through a lot of adversity in my life. But then on the other hand, since that adversity I went through with parents dying and my mom being arrested and stuff like that, I was like, oh, I should be able to handle, failing in baseball or whatever. But I did not take that as well. And I wanted to be tough, you want to be tough and you don't think about, services that are provided. So
sometimes the toughness is actually part of being able to be open and say, here's truly what's going on inside of me, and I'm willing to look at that. That's a different type of toughness.
Yeah, and you're not born with the coping mechanisms to deal with those kinds of things. That's what makes humans human, is that you have a community. We're a community-based animal, you know what I mean? That's why church and counseling and things like that are a necessity in a person's life. You aren't born with the tools to deal with those kinds of heavy happenings in your life. And one of the things I wanted to mention earlier was, you may question, is this problem big enough or worthy of calling somebody and talking about it? If you're asking yourself that, then yes, you should call somebody. It could just be a casual conversation. It may not be a intervention of any kind, this high level counseling thing. It could just be talking to somebody who has a couple tips for you to help manage difficult feelings. Swallowing those feelings is more damaging than dealing with them healthily.
It's
That's
okay.
Right. In a healthy way. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah.
But yeah, just to reiterate, like, if you think that you need to talk, then you probably do need to talk. And in our case, no matter what your financial situation is, which a lot of people think is the thing that stops them from getting the help that they need, we'll get you the help you need. It doesn't matter if you're, lower income or higher income, if you have personal or private insurance, if you can just pay cash, we have ways of doing that too. Okay. That help is available in this community. Incredible resources in Tuscarawas and Carroll County.
And you are the perfect example, Perci, of the roller coaster that is life. I mean, the opportunities that you have had are things that, my little leaguer, his travel ball team, he would die for something like that. But then you've also had some pretty awful stuff come your way too. And I wondered if I could ask you a personal question. You just really shared some personal stuff. How do you feel sitting around the table and knowing we're on a podcast that you just shared this personal stuff?
Oh, we're on a podcast? No,
surprise.
I've always kind of been that way. The way I was raised, if you ever interacted with my father or my aunt, anybody, a Garner, besides my brother, we're pretty open. I don't hide anything really. And I feel like I don't really have anything to hide. Maybe if I was doing something illegal or something, that maybe I wouldn't be as open, but just, and a lot of people always ask me that, hey, why are you so, why you just don't care, right? I'm like, no, I mean, I love people. Yeah. And that's always been the case. And you can ask my grade school teachers. I've just been that person that, they didn't always like how much I talked and how open I was in class, but I would have good grades, but there'd be a paragraph written like, Perci talks a lot.
He was too social.
Yes. And I guess I would always be the center of attention, but I didn't want like, I guess Josh can speak to this too. I hope he can attest, but I was never like a big vocal guy, like in sports, like, hey guys, I'm the leader, like rally around me. Yeah. It's just my personality just kind of came out and that's how it was. But yeah, steal the mic.
Yeah, I'm going to steal the mic real quick. Yes, I was pretty fortunate to be able to play ball with Perci back in the day. And it was not a rah, I'm the leader, follow me. It was you wanted to follow Perci because Perci had that personality and you could tell that he cared about people, not just to get to a certain level or something like that. Nothing was fake. You were 100% genuine. You still are. I mean, completely sincere. And it was just a lot of fun. That's why when I knew you were thinking about coming in here and talking on a podcast, I'm like, yes, Perci would be awesome at this.
I appreciate you.
Because you're just a great person to listen to. You got a great heart, great personality, a lot of fun to listen to.
I appreciate that. That was nice.
Well, and that's why I think it's tremendous that you shared your personal experience because, and I guarantee everybody at this table, we're not all talking about what our experience has been, but everybody has gone through bumps in their life. And I just know the level of respect and admiration that the adults and kids in the community have. And when someone like you shares that it hasn't all been, roses in an uphill or a celebration, that makes it easier for the kids that are struggling and the adults that are struggling to say, I experienced that too.
That is definitely part of a growth experience. We kind of move from something being wrong and flawed to how we are growing as people and how we become better people.
And I think the Indians, that they're trying to adopt that is the growth mentality is what they always say. And as players, we kind of made fun of it, but it actually
makes sense.
It works. It makes sense. Yeah. But I just know, and this isn't why I share. I kind of just talk a lot and have a big mouth, but it just happens to go, me being the platform I have, sharing that, even though if it's spiritual, I kind of left, no stone unturned. I kind of just would let it, happen. If I feel like it would help somebody knowing that I experienced this, then
I'm going to apologize in advance because I'm going to exploit you now that you have shared your story, and we'll see if I would love to see if we can get you with just other opportunities for you whenever you're comfortable, whenever you're willing to be able to talk a little bit more about what that was like for you, because as much work as we've done at the Adams Board to decrease stigma, I think you just probably knocked us out of the water with your willingness to share your experience right there. So I thank you on behalf of our system.
Oh yeah, no problem.
It's interesting. You mentioned listening to comedy and that's a good release. And I think comedy is based in the down, like a lot of comedians will say that they've gone through depression or drug issues and things like that. And then all of a sudden they come back with this polished story, and it's very relatable to a lot of people. And that's what we connect with. And just kind of building on that too, is in this age with the connectivity that we have through social media and YouTube and live streaming, and look at churches live streaming on Sunday morning. But not only that, we're seeing so many people's stories in an age. This is unprecedented that we get to have this connection with so many people, with the opportunity of connecting with a single person who has a similar story. And just like you, like maybe not everybody connects exactly with what you went through. But there are people who are connecting with what you went through. And then there are other comedians or other celebrities or other people who have a big platform. People are connecting and seeing that they're not alone. And part of that is obviously the youth coming in. That's always the change, is our kids coming in with new technologies, new understandings of how things can be and how they're going to be. I find that fascinating. Like I said, I think my generation is kind of one of the first to really be open with our feelings with our friends, just communicating in that way. And I see it getting better and better as younger kids come up. When I was working in that class at Dover, it just blew my mind with what they were talking about and what they were willing to say to me. And they knew me for maybe 2 days, 2 hours and 2 days. And what they were talking about. And that, one kid said he used the text line and whoa, okay, that's great. Let's talk about it. Like, what was that like? But just what a great opportunity. Like, that's so cool that they're willing to talk like that and to be open. And I hope that continues. I know it will continue because that's the trend, but getting out there and doing what you do and being public with that and being open like that, that's the driver. That's how we get better.
And I've been open with other things more than the stuff I wanted to be tough about, because I feel like it was normal to have issues with, losing family members or just stuff going like that. But then to struggle, being from Dover, I wanted to, I know a lot of athletes from this area had an opportunity, but then maybe injuries or something like that. So I was like, I do not want this to be the reason I didn't make it because but one of my college football coaches, believe it or not, he had on the doorway right before we walked into the QB room was mental is to physical is 4:1. So in football, he was saying, hey, mental is more important than physical. So when you get to baseball, it's a whole nother level. Right. And I just, it took me a second to understand, what that really meant. I was like, hey, I got to know the plays. That's mental. No, it's confidence in yourself. It's being able to forget, bad things that you've did, obviously you go back to watch film or something like that, it's a whole different learning experience. But I was taking bad pitching performances to Subway with me. Like I had a scoreboard on my forehead, like, oh, this lady's going to know I sucked yesterday.
Well, you have, how many thousands of people staring down at you, watching every single step that you take. You pick up the rosin bag, they're everything that you do, they're watching. There are people who don't have that platform, but feel the same pressure, whether it's from their family members or from their children or just anxiety in general. Just that pressure doesn't take 20,000 people staring down at you. It can feel that way though. And that's just bringing like that same story. And how do you change that to make it more relatable to me, where I'll never be on that platform. Maybe someday. I'm a pretty good harmonica player, so who knows?
Yeah.
I'm not. But no, I think, that's how you turn these stories into relatable stories, is that that anxiety for you is just as heavy as for somebody else. Even though the ingredients are a little different, you still get the same cake at the end of the day.
Exactly.
Well, I'm curious because knowing that you've had a lot of trauma in your life, we work with kids today and we try to build resiliency. Life is tough. Life's going to be tough. How do you dust yourself off and continue to move forward? And I wondered, how did you do it? I mean, you've not had an easy road especially when you were younger. How did you continue to make the right choices and go down the right path?
That's when the community comes in. So I had a strong family. Obviously, my dad passed when I was a freshman, but him having military background and just the way he brought me up, which at the time I thought it was really mean, but now I understand, like, wow, hearing stories about, a lot of my teammates, what their life was like. I was like, wow, my dad he was awesome, actually. So, but having teachers, coaches, and I've just been blessed. I've never had that coach who tried to take advantage of me to throw until my arm falls off.
Yeah.
I've never had the coach in college who wants me to play for him another year, so he's going to lie to scouts. I just never had like someone who tried to take advantage of me. Yeah. And luckily, with being in Dover, I'm sure Philly and other surrounding places are like that. But I just had the experience with Dover, and it felt like everyone wanted to help me. There was no hey, I really want to see him fail. It was just family members, other people stepping up in my family, and other leaders, always having someone positive, an adult that knew how to help in some form or fashion.
It's that believing in you.
Yeah. Even because I didn't believe myself for the longest. I even in Pro Bowl, I had teammates like, dude, you're like really good, and I'm just like, wow, like they think I'm good. This is crazy. And that just goes a long way. Just a selfless mentality I've always tried to have. But I guess that's another topic for another day when we're talking sports. Of you don't really always want to have a selfless mentality when you're competing. But now that I'm out of that arena, my personality, I think, will thrive in a community setting, and it's coming back to Dover, so.
There's something about you that there's an openness to that, willing to receive feedback, willing to consider what other people are saying, and then how do I apply that to what I'm doing? So that openness piece is very significant as we think about other people and how that helps other people.
Perci, I really appreciate you sharing because, the one thing I keep hearing over and over is the community, the support, the adults, the protective factors. And I want to encourage listeners to understand, the change we make in a community is about relationships, and don't ever underestimate the influence we have in each other's lives. First of all, I think we all enjoy serving other people. But my goodness, we also have that responsibility and privilege when we place those protective factors, when we reach out, when we encourage, when we motivate, when we put those expectations up there, so especially for our young people, they're always going to rise up to it. I can tell you've had those people in your life that just had expectations of you, and those made you the young man that you are.
For
and
sure.
So I just want to appreciate you sharing that. And I want the community to realize we all have that ability to just reach out and watch this generation below us just rise up. So thank you.
For sure. Vulnerability, I think, creates closeness. You know, a lot of people want to, oh no, I don't want to be vulnerable because then they're going to think I'm weak and they don't want to be around me. But I think it works the other way. So
I'm loving this guy.
Yeah, me too.
Jeez.
You might just cut yourself all kinds of things to do in the community.
I know. I'm sorry in advance.
no, it's all good. When Steve Van Horn and ComDoc moved me down here, they're like, now you want to be involved in the community, right? I'm like, yes. They're like, okay, because we know you hanging out around there, it's going to happen. And I just got hired there, so Steve didn't know what type of person I was, or as he says, he didn't know how smart I was. So thanks, Steve. But yeah, I like, as you can see right now, I enjoy, relationships and talking with people and just bettering everyone and myself at the same time.
And you came back to Tusc County, and so many times we see people leave for whatever opportunity, college or sports or whatever it is, and they don't come back. And the fact that you did, that just is truly appreciated, and that makes your message even stronger with our kids.
Well, thank you. I guess we got to take that photo. But thanks, Josh, and thanks, Jody, and Tim, and Miles for having me on here. And this was fun.
Thanks for listening to another episode of the Anti-Drug Coalition podcast, a member of the Get Level Podcast Network. For more information, visit getlevelpod.com or find us on Facebook. Download our podcast shows on Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. And make sure you stay tuned for more great shows that are coming soon.